Welcome to Chit Chatter with Rhea, the podcast that provides information to you about the legal and political process. Now here's your host, Rhea Chattergoon.
Welcome back to Chit Chatter, guys. I know I've been a little bit stingy about the podcast recordings. Life has just been lifing, if you know what I mean. I've got a couple of trials coming up. I'm still dealing with this house renovation. Who knew adulting would be this stressful? I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with trying to get permits from a city and just dealing with contractors and, all just materials, all that other stuff. It is a pain in the ass. It really is. It really is. At this point, I want to just sell my house, go buy a new build where everything's done and I don't have to worry about it. But alas, I live in South Florida and I probably couldn't afford to buy my house now if I were to sell it and try to rebuy it. So that's where we are. So much has happened, because the Florida Republican GOP is just it has passed. I mean, session's over at this point, but has passed all these bills. And our great governor, DeSantis, is just signing these hateful bills and laughing about them. He signed a couple days ago the transgender ban bill, which, I have talked about on this podcast before, but basically it bans a gender-affirming care for trans youth and adds restrictions for adults seeking care. It's allowing the state to remove transgender minors. You can't use state funding for medication. One of the things that people don't realize, though, is that this banning of affirming care for trans youth also translates to gender care for young women who may be, suffering from different issues, right? I talked a little bit about it in the last podcast, but it's disgusting. It was disgusting to watch him sign that bill. It was disgusting to watch the people around him clap. I will never understand why these people feel the need to take away others' rights, to impinge on others' freedoms in order to make themselves feel better, in order to claim that they're doing what's right, because it isn't. And so today I have a special guest, Senator Shevrin Jones, who is from Miami. He's a Miami boy. I shouldn't say boy, he's a grown-ass man. But he is one of the people I've been watching for a long time. He's very outspoken, like I am, about some of these issues. But he's also in Tallahassee fighting for the right things, to do the right things and to help constituents instead of trying to ban all of the things that the Republicans seem to want to do. So, I just wanted to run down, since it's the end of session, some of the bills that passed and that have been signed into law, right? We know permitless carry in Florida has been passed. It's been signed into law. One of the things about that bill that I don't think I mentioned before is that it bans credit card companies from applying a code to purchase guns of ammunition. So credit card companies, if you use your credit card to purchase a weapon, there was a specific code that the credit cards had that was used to track suspicious weapon purchases, right? That was actually a part of that permitless carry bill that was signed into law. And so companies who are found to be in violation of that, or, putting forth that code, could be fined up to $10,000. That's in that bill. I actually did not realize that when I read the bill. So as we talk about these bills, keep in mind that the Republicans are the party of small government. They are the parties of supporting businesses, right? So keep that in mind as I talk about some of these bills that have been signed. SB 266, we know that's the banning of state funding for DEI programs. That has been signed into law. He signed it despite major opposition. And you hear me talk a little bit about that in my interview with Senator Jones on how that affects, schools and secondary schools, post-secondary schools in Florida. If your kid is headed to school, to a state school in Florida, you should be concerned. You should be concerned. I mean, the professors are concerned. Professors are leaving state schools because of this particular ban. What else was passed? The SB 1580, and I'm giving you these Senate bill numbers, by the way, in hopes that you don't take my word for it. It's my hope that you Google these bills. You can go on floridasenate.gov. You can look up these bills. You can read the bills in their entirety so that you're not just taking my little sound bites and information that I'm giving you. And you can make a decision for yourself. So SB 1580, that's the bill that allow healthcare providers and insurers, by the way, I want to again specify insurers, because again, we're talking about businesses in the state of Florida to refuse services based on their personal, quote, moral, ethical, or religious beliefs. So how does this operate? You walk into a hospital, you happen to be of Jewish descent, religion, Muslim, and a doctor says, well, I don't agree with your religion. It's against my personal moral or religious belief or ethical belief. I can refuse treatment to you. That's what this bill says. Can you imagine how dangerous that is? Now, this goes against everything any doctor, nurse, I wouldn't say truly believe, because I'm sure there are people who do, but they take an oath, right? They take an oath to administer care. And so it's going to be interesting how that processes in the coming years. SB 1718. I know there's been a lot of social media content. I can't speak today about this. That bill criminalizes Floridians who shelter, support, provide transportation to undocumented immigrants, including those who overstay visas or who've lived in the state for decades, but who still remain undocumented, who have U.S.-born children. So these are undocumented immigrants who have U.S.-born children. That bill authorizes the law enforcement to conduct random checks of businesses. I'm sure you've seen that going around. I've seen it on TikTok. Them stopping you, even though we're not a border state, right? We are not a border state as contemplated in Texas, in New Mexico, etc. So, this bill allows law enforcement to conduct random checks of businesses to ensure compliance. It's prohibiting funding for community IDs. So, someone who's undocumented could go get an ID so that they have identification, right? Because we want people to have identification. It's requiring hospitals to inquire of Medicaid patients whether they're lawfully in the country and allow them to collect data, which we've never criminalized that before. I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting, and it's going to affect the people who live and work in Florida. I want to be clear. Immigration obviously is an issue in this country. A path to legal citizenship and being documented in this country. We have to come up with some solutions. It's not perfect, but criminalizing these people in the manner that SB 1718 does is atrocious. And so what we're seeing now is you've seen it around social media. You've seen people walking off of job sites, construction job sites, just being empty. You're seeing fields of agriculture being unattended to. And the fact is, Americans don't want those jobs. Americans aren't capable of doing those jobs. So we're going to see, as the phrase is, you fucked around and you're going to find out, right? That's what's coming down the pipeline. The other bill that was passed and signed into law is SB 1616. What does this do? It hides DeSantis's travel records and visitor logs as he's about to announce his candidacy for presidency. We can now see where he's going. We can't see where our tax dollars are taking him. We can't see who's walking into the governor's mansion to meet with him, because we're making it now legal for him to be bought and paid and with no oversight and in complete violation of the Florida Sunshine Law. Well, I guess it's not a violation anymore because they're now exempting it. I mean, man, do these Republicans understand how this could flip on them in the event we ever get a Democratic governor? I mean, there would be such outrage if this were, listen, if Andrew Gillum had become our governor and he had tried to pass a bill like this, you all would be in uproar. Why is he hiding these things, right? What else was passed? SB 252, prohibiting businesses, educational institutions, and government agencies from requiring people to take COVID-19 tests or provide proof of vaccination or wear a mask to enter their facilities. So remember, I mentioned the Republicans are the party of small government. Yet here we are telling private businesses, private institutions, what they can and can't do. The hypocrisy. Senate Bill 7050 was also signed into law. That one's interesting. It imposes restrictions on voter registration organizations, basically telling them what they can and can't do. Because why? We are going to suppress votes in Florida because that's the only way they win. We've dealt with redistricting, we're dealing with gerrymandering, and now we're imposing restrictions on organizations that are trying to get people to vote. I'll say to you, like I say in every single podcast, make sure you're registered to vote. If you have a mail-in ballot, make sure you go to your supervisor of elections and redo your request for a mail-in ballot, because as of January, it has completely expired and you are off the radar, okay? So please make sure you're taking care of that. Also, as I always ask, please make sure you talk to 5 people and make sure they're registered to vote. I know, I sound like a radio ad at this point. The other most disgusting bill passed and signed into law, we talked a little bit about that, Senate Bill 254, banning gender-affirming care, the expansion of the Don't Say Gay law up to 12th grade. They said, this is only K through 3rd grade last year when that bill passed. But it was just the setup, right, to expand it this year, because we know no one was talking about pronouns and all these things in K through 3rd. No one was having these discussions. And of course, we are now dealing with the onslaught of banning books. Just today, I just saw a Miami Herald article that talks about this one parent, Daly Salinas is her name, and I will out her because she has the nerve to do this, complained about 5 books in the Miami-Dade library system or school system and got them banned, because there is no process, right? It's just one parent or one person complaining about a set of books, and the school system, specifically your school board, which again are important elections that you need to focus on, these school boards aren't fighting it. There's no process. They just go ahead and ban it. So what was banned today was like history of blacks, history of Cubans. They banned the Amanda Gorman poem that she read at President Biden's inauguration, all because it talks too much about race. I mean, what are our kids learning in school at this point? Who's to say what they are being taught in the public school? If you don't like it, send your kid to a private Christian school. Florida's now introduced and signed a bill, by the way, that will give you up to $7,000 for your kid to go to private school. Take your kid and go there. Stop infiltrating the public school system. It's just disgusting. I think I've talked a lot about what has happened this particular session in Florida, and we're going to see the ramifications of it. Florida is not a great place to live right now. It really isn't. And, I was watching social media on Instagram. It was this Australian politician talking about, if you want hate, go to Florida. Don't bring it here. And I was I had embarrassment watching it because he's kind of right. So on the federal level, so much is happening. The debt ceiling. There's this threat of us just not raising the debt ceiling. And it happens. It happens every time there is a Democratic president, right? Because it's just a tool for politicians, and I will say politicians, to keep the American public in limbo, right? And so what is the debt ceiling? What is it? What is a simple explanation of it? The best explanation I saw recently was, imagine you're a kid who's been given a credit card by your parents. I didn't. My parents would not trust me with a credit card. But there was a limit on how much you can spend. And so the United States is like that too, right? The Congress gives us a debt ceiling on what we can spend and how much we can borrow. So what is happening now is that the U.S. needs to borrow money and pay back bills or pay back its debt in the most simplest form, right? Yes, your government is living paycheck to paycheck. It's actually the ghetto when you really think about it. And so some of these debts, and I think the percentage was 97% of the debt that we now have to pay on was accumulated during Trump, right? With the same people in the House right now who are holding up the debt ceiling or holding up raising it. So, and I'm trying to think in my mind how to explain this on a very basic level. So excuse me if I'm sort of blubbering around it. But look, to avoid defaulting on its debt, the government has to do some, fancy accounting to sort of keep things going for a little while. But if Congress doesn't agree to raise or get rid of the debt limit, we would have some serious problems. Now, President Biden wants to raise the limit without any strings attached, right? And so some of the strings are attached that the Republicans want is to not attack the billions of dollars they've given to their wealthy friends. What some of the Republicans want to attack are veterans benefits, jobs. I mean, things that affect the American people. And so what's happening right now is President Biden has said, yeah, I'm not giving on any of the things you want in order to raise the debt ceiling. I'm holding on that. The Republicans are holding on raising it. And so that now these politicians are playing a chicken game with the American people. And so, look, it's a game. They're going to come to some sort of compromise. However, I think if President Biden gives on some of the demands that the GOP is demanding, he's gonna lose the confidence of a lot of people, myself included, because I feel like, this game that the Republicans play and hold over the Democrats' head, call their bluff. I mean, there's some discussion of, can the president invoke the 14th Amendment, which says that America has to pay its debt? Can he do that? I haven't read into it. I'm not educated enough to discuss it with you. But there are some scholars who said, yeah, he can invoke that 14th Amendment. And so, look, one of the things that I don't think the Democrats do well is call the bluff, use the tools at their disposal, right? In my opinion, the damn Supreme Court should have been stacked by now. It's not. We should have an abortion bill. We don't. I mean, there are things that can be done that the Democrats hold on. And again, it's just politicians playing politics, affecting your lives. And you have to know what's going on. You have to see it for yourself. You have to read it for yourself. Don't just listen to me. Don't just listen to sound bites off of the very, very one-sided media. All right. I won't talk too long today. I just kind of wanted to run through those bills that have been passed and signed into law. I hope you enjoy the interview with Senator Jones. He is a state senator who represents most of Miami Gardens here in South Florida. He is the first openly gay state senator. And and he was an educator. So he was in the education system, and you'll hear a little bit about why he decided to run for politics, or run for office, I should say. But he's working. He's working. I've been really impressed by him in that he's not afraid to introduce some of the bills that he's introduced, knowing that they're not going to get past committee. Some politicians will not introduce bills because they know it's not going to get past committee. But I like that he's holding people to actually listening, to learning, to reading these bills that he's putting forth. And I hope he has a lot more success in the fall session. I hope you enjoy this. Again, please make sure you're registered to vote. Please make sure you're getting 5 people to vote after you listen to this podcast. I implore you. All right. Welcome to the show, Senator Shevrin Jones. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for making the time. I know you just finished a very long session, a very combative session. So
Yep.
I'm sure you need a little bit of downtime here. And I know I'm impinging on that, so I appreciate it.
It's all good. I signed up for
it. So like I was telling you offline, I started this podcast really to give our community, and when I say our community, I mean South Florida community, the Black and Brown community, more information about our state politics and what's going on, not only in the state, but, federally as well. And one of the things I've been doing is trying to interview some of our local congressmen and senators. I've had Tina Polsky on. Hillary Cassell is a very good friend of mine. Nice. I can't get any of the Republicans to come on, though. I have extended invitations, but I think I'm a little too outspoken for people. So, that probably doesn't bode well. But that's one of the things I like about you, right? I've been following you for a while. Wow. I like that you don't bite your tongue. You speak on the issues, and you're very respectful of it, but you speak out about what's going on. And so tell me what led you to run for office.
Oh, well, first, Ria, thank you again for having me. I think it's very amazing that you are even doing such a platform to be able to express and share what's happening in the state and in our community. So thank you. I was a AP chemistry teacher at Everglades Senior High School. And it was one particular year I was blessed with the opportunity to teach a level 1 environmental science class. At that time, we just considered it a course recovery, which I think they still call it today. It was the same year that the end of course exam was just signed into law. The law would have it would slow down the process where those students would be able to graduate. So many of them were upset because they were prepared to graduate in the summer, and that wasn't going to happen. So I never forget going back and ask who changed the rules. Right. And they said politicians did. I said, okay, well, I'm running for office. So I did. I ran for office because I was upset because right. I wanted to figure out, like, how can I be a part of a table that's making decisions to ensure that someone is speaking up for the person who can't do it for themselves. And I knew those young people, they didn't have the capacity, them or their parents. They especially their parents were trying to just get through life, and them trying to just get through school. So who's talking for them? And so I said, I'll do it.
Wow, that simple, huh?
I mean, it's a lot of work, but
oh no, I've been involved in a couple of campaigns. I understand the work behind it. Trust me.
Oh my God.
Trust me. But education is one of the things I think, especially this session, you have been very outspoken about. Especially with what's going on in the state of Florida. I know you are on a number of very important committees. This year, education, pre-K through 12 and post-secondary committees you were on this year. How was that experience?
It was good. I guess I've been on education every year. Outside of the bills that we did that pulls funding from our public schools, or totally making vouchers universal with no cap, regardless of where you stand on school choice. I tell people all the time that, yeah, there is a world, and I'm sure if we sat down long enough to figure out how it looked, there's a world to where you can have your school choice without affecting the public school system. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is that the public school systems are going to suffer a great deal with funding being taken away from them, because it's now being stifled into to other entities. Which, truth be told, when you're not giving accountability to how and what those dollars are being used for, which we should be asking those questions, you do Floridians a disservice.
And can you give a little bit of explanation for people who don't know what this bill is? Um, that can give us an explanation of how those monies are being spent.
So currently right now, how the monies are being spent is because those dollars go into general revenue. When those dollars go into general revenue, you have your healthcare budget and your education budget, which are your the largest budgets within the state. With those dollars now, based on what we just filed, what we just passed, that the private schools and the public schools basically will compete for those same dollars based off of the student allocation, which is about $7,000 something dollars every for every child. Now, if you have a child who say you want to send them to a private school, instead of that money going to the public school system, the money now sticks with the child, and the parent can use that as a as dollars to pay for their child's private school. Again, yeah, if parents want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But a child, $7,000, first of all, is not going to pay for a lot, especially not the private schools that we have here
Right.
in South Florida. But rightfully so. Look at the services. I just got a phone call from a parent not too long ago who their child was legitimately getting the voucher dollars because she was on she's a child with a different ability. But now that the Pandora's box have been opened, she's now having a hard time getting the services and the resources for her daughter. Why? Because people who don't even need the dollars will now have access to them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that is one of my frustrations as a parent, right?
Absolutely.
That I mean, I live in a neighborhood that you would couch as a quote unquote good neighborhood with good
Yeah.
schools. But even then I see the lack of resources in my school, in my public school for my
Right.
child. And
Right.
all I see this doing, and I think everyone has been so outspoken about it, is that we are decimating our public school system. And I mean, I think, look, I have my thoughts on it. I think it's intentional, right?
Yeah.
What's going on with, and I know you've been very outspoken about the banning of books and the quote unquote CRT debate that's
Right.
going on here in Florida. I actually just saw a Miami Herald article that talks about Miami-Dade County Public Schools just pulled 5 books off the shelf because one
Yeah.
parent complained.
Yeah.
And it talks about Cuban history, talks about Black history. I mean, they banned the Amanda Gorman poem from Biden's inauguration. I mean, it's just
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous. It's
I saw
ridiculous,
that.
right?
I saw that.
But we have people in our state government who are supporting these moves, who are introducing these bills. And because they have this supermajority now, they're getting these bills passed, which is very, very frustrating for citizens
Yeah.
of Florida. I'm sure that has to be frustrating for you, sitting on the floor, having to go through these votes. I know you gave a very great speech last year that was emotional for you
Yeah.
on the floor. I remember watching that and thinking to myself, this was before I decided to start the podcast, thinking to
Mm-hmm.
myself, God, that has got to be like emotionally just like it wrecks you for the rest of the day, right? To have to get up
Mm-hmm.
and speak about that. And I don't think a lot of people think about the humanity of our government officials who are fighting against this. And you're sort of fighting an uphill battle
Yeah.
because you don't have the votes. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have the votes to oppose these bills, but you have to speak out because that's what your constituents sent you to do. Um, I know you are the first openly gay state
Mhm.
senator.
Mhm.
You're also a Black man in
Mhm.
Florida.
Mhm.
How has that helped or not helped you in the Senate?
It's very interesting. I like how you framed this, because when I walk into a room, I'm Black first.
Right,
Let's be clear,
right,
right? And unless I tell you my story and who I am, you'll never know that I do represent the LGBTQ community. But then I always take a step back, Rhea, because I will want first. I will hope that you recognize me as a human being,
right. That's our hope,
and
right?
that's our hope,
Yeah.
right? But being in a legislative body to where you walk into this room and you have to prove your existence as a Black man and as a gay man all at the same time, is that challenging? Yes, right? But how do I show up as a human in giving them the human experience and the story of that? Because if you're not convicted based off of voting against me as a Black man or voting against me as a gay man, then maybe let me see if I can make this more of a human experience for you. If this was the
Mhm.
shoe was on the other foot. And
Mhm.
that's how we were able to win over 4 votes from
Okay.
Republicans last year, because making I'm personally, and some people are just callous to where it won't do anything. But those who sway just a tad bit to where I can put their children in this scenario, to where if this is your child or this could be your child, and I know many of them have the excuse, oh, my child, she's just a child, but she's gonna grow up soon.
Right.
She's gonna have to make some decisions, right?
Right.
So I try to. My goal is to, and I will continue to do that. Real is try to make this as real as possible for them.
Right. Right. You got appointed to the board of advisors for HBCUs. I know you're a FAMU graduate.
Yes, right.
And you're Alpha Man, so you're
That's
just
right.
all in. For those of you not watching the screen, he's throwing
Yeah.
up his sign right now. How has that been? How has that been? I mean, that's a
It's
good honor, great
good.
honor.
It's great. It's great. I'm grateful for President Biden for to appoint me to the HBCU advisory. But Chairman Ross is doing he's doing some amazing work when it comes to the report that we have to present to the president next month. We're looking at what does infrastructure look like, internal and external infrastructure within our HBCUs look like, because a lot of the buildings on HBCU campuses are dilapidated.
Right.
And the funding that many receive from their states, especially if you're in red states, you're not getting as much money as some of your PWIs, predominantly white institutions, to be able to put those necessary renovations in place. So, I mean, that's one of the many things that I know the board is working on, and also working along with a lot of these colleges, universities, for them to get get more grant funding for research. Because if you are a FAMU or even a Howard University, there's no reason why you shouldn't be a R3 school, research school.
Right.
Most schools are just R1s, which they don't receive a lot of federal funding. But we should be trying to move HBCUs and becoming more research-based institutions so they can receive some of the same dollars as your UFs and other institutions are receiving. So those are some of the things that we have been working on, and I'm looking forward to the report.
Oh, great. So one of the controversial bills, as we're talking about HBCUs right now,
Yes.
Senate Bill 266,
Yep.
which bans funding for DEI programs for secondary schools.
Yes.
I know that's something you have been outspoken about, voted against. How do you see that playing out in the next coming years for our schools? I mean, it's something I'm concerned about with,
Yeah.
my goddaughter's at FAM right now.
Right.
But I also have a lot of friends whose kids are getting ready to go to college. And I'll tell you, most of them are hesitant about sending their kids to state schools within Florida. And I think rightfully so.
Oh, I was just about to say that. I think rightfully so, that this concept that they have started in the legislature with the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion. and the defunding of the programs that promote it. I think that I would be very frank and honest, like I said, and I'll keep saying it, all of this stuff is racist at its core. Yeah, the fact that your higher education institutions, the place where you go for the diversity of thought, now you have a governmental body who believes it is their job to tell professors what they should teach and tell students, not even children,
Right.
how they should learn. But mind you, some of those young people have paid their own money to go there.
Right.
Pay their own money, Rhea, to go there.
And I love that you call it what it is, right? It's just racism at its core.
It's racist at its core.
Why is that message though? And I always say this, listen, the Republicans are masters at messaging. They're masters at controlling the narrative. It's one of the listen, I'm a registered Democrat, I vote Democrat, but my biggest criticism of the Democratic Party is that they fail on messaging. They fail on combating it. I think this year has been a little bit better with people like you who are outspoken about it. But why is it that the Republicans are getting this message that this is needed out in Florida?
Well, it's because of how it's being framed, right? For instance, when you say the bill that passed is called Parental Rights in Education,
right?
But colloquially known as Don't Say Gay,
right?
Now let's deal with the parental rights in education. What parent would not be in favor of you saying, "Of course, I want more rights for my child. That's my child."
Right.
So you have parents who agree with that without knowing anything about the bill. But then when you start breaking down what the bill does, which 9 times out of 10, you don't have time to do that because it's too nuanced. You find yourself having to chase the story now, in which we found ourselves doing. Because parental rights in education had nothing at all to do with giving parents their rights. Why? Because the Constitution already gives parents those rights.
Yeah.
But if you read the bill, it was to ensure that sexual orientation, gender identity was not being taught in grades K through 3. But mind you, it was never being taught in K through 3.
Correct. It was never being taught. Right.
Never being taught. It was just their way to open the door to do what? To take it from K through 12.
Right.
As they have already done.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what they did, right?
Exactly.
My fear is, man, what about these kids that can't talk to their parents, that can't now go to teachers and have discussions with them? I mean, where do we leave those kids? We leave those kids so unsupported in the state of Florida. And in the same breath, you're talking about parental rights, but then you're banning books.
Yeah.
At the school level. You're making a decision on what books my child could read, not me. Right? Like you're not allowing me that right. These are the same people who, during COVID, when they didn't want their kids wearing masks at school, were in uproar that their rights were being affected. But now we're seeing the government step into education. I have a lot of friends who are teachers who are just frustrated, who want to leave the state of Florida. I think that's one of the things we are going to see in this state. Some of the bills passed this session have been what I call legal ways to discriminate, right? We're talking about Don't Say Gay. We're talking about, the banning on books. The what was it? The SB 1580 that now allows for healthcare providers and insurers in the state to refuse services based on their personal conscience. Right. But that's actually like against the oath that most medical professionals take. Right. It's just insanity to me. Now, I will tell you, I have spoken to a lot of my doctor friends, and they're like, listen, we're ignoring that, right? However, the scenario I see is someone in the middle of Florida, who may be brown in color, goes to a medical office and the doctor said, well, I don't want to treat you.
Exactly. Yep.
Then they can't go to another hospital or whatever for miles. What happens then?
What happens then? Yeah.
But what I see happening is, I mean, from the legal perspective, is just more and more suits against the state of Florida, lawsuits that we are now spending taxpayers' dollars that could go to healthcare, that could go to education, that, you know what I mean, being spent.
That's what they want to do. They want to push all of this stuff to the courts, especially to the Florida courts because it's stacked, and because of the federal courts because it's stacked. So that's why they're doing this. They know a lot of this stuff is unconstitutional, but it doesn't matter. Pushing it to the courts is what they want to do to test the judicial system.
Do you think that's going to backfire though? Because some of these, I mean, yes, I agree. I'm a lawyer here in Florida and I agree the
Yeah,
courts are stacked.
yeah,
But for example, today I actually just saw it. Judge Moore, who's in the federal court in the
yes, I
Southern
saw it.
District
Yes,
of
yeah,
Florida, just said that Miami-Dade now has to, or City of Miami now has to redraw their redistricting map because
yeah.
it was gerrymandered.
It was
And
gerrymandered.
so I don't think the Republicans think this is going to happen, right? Because listen, Judge Moore I practiced in front of him. He's
Yeah,
a conservative judge. He was appointed by Bush. He was nominated or thought to be nominated by Trump for the Sentencing Commission. I mean, he is conservative by all means.
yeah, yeah.
So do you think they think this is going to backfire on them, or what's kind of been the feel in up in Tallahassee?
Well, I don't think that they're thinking about it backfiring on them. It's the same as any narcissist, to
I like
where,
that.
yeah, because you don't believe that anything can happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you want to do because you're untouchable until you're not.
Yeah.
And I think Donna Deegan's win in Jacksonville, I think it was a slap on the wrist for them. Like, hey, tighten up, because these people, they don't like this.
Right.
And that's what's going to backfire on Governor DeSantis when he announced his presidency tomorrow or Thursday.
Right. Right. Because it's coming. It's
Oh,
coming.
absolutely.
It's coming. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I am no fan of his. I will tell you that. Him laughing, signing the transgender bill
Oh,
or
yeah.
ban bill the other day, and he was cracking
Yeah.
up about it. I mean,
Yeah.
he couldn't be more unlikable to me.
Yeah.
You know, I think the fear among people though is just that he's quote unquote a little bit better than Trump, although they're
Yeah.
kind of racing each other to the bottom right now. But
Yeah.
you know, I to me, I've always said like he's smarter and he's scarier to me. And you can see how he's been pulling the puppet strings of the GOP in the state
Yeah.
legislature.
Yeah.
Um, have you had any discussions with any of your Republican colleagues about why they're doing the things they're doing or why they're
Yeah.
voting for the bills that they are?
Yep. I've asked them, and some of them will be honest and say because they have to. Many of them are in leadership positions, and so they don't want to lose their chairmanships. They don't want to be primary. So they're vocal about it. They will also share that they are not. Um, they're all on board. They're not all on board with Governor DeSantis is doing. So, but they still vote
Right.
with them 98%, 99% of the time. So, but they speak, but they won't speak out.
They won't speak out. They
No,
really won't speak out.
no.
The NAACP put out a sort of travel warning the other day
Yeah,
for for Florida. I know last month you made a statement that Florida is still a safe place for LGBTQIA plus community. Do you still feel
mhm.
that way?
Yeah. Well, listen. Here's what I'll say. Yeah, the advisory is just that. It was a clear warning to people that just know that when you come here, this is a state that have done laws to hurt blacks, LGBTQ immigrants, and what so have you. Um, do I believe Florida is safe for the LGBTQ community? I think we have made Florida very hostile towards the LGBTQ community. I think we have made Florida hostile to anyone who might not look like the party in power
Right.
right now, where you have some individuals who just feel that they can't raise their kids here because their kids are not safe here. And I know the argument is not, well, all of that is just propaganda. Well, it's not. It's propaganda, especially when you have moms who have to pick their children up from school early because they fear their child being bullied because a parent is picking on a child to their child. It's all of a lot of this stuff is taught in the households,
Right.
and and this is where the Florida not being a safe place to be right now is coming from because of the hostile environment which has been created through politics and
Yeah,
policy.
it does not feel safe, right?
No.
I mean, it doesn't. You saw when Governor DeSantis signed the bill, and then there was the "Kill All Gays" billboard in
Billboard,
Orlando.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's scary. I mean, we're in. We've got other countries. I was watching a video clip the other day of a senator in Australia saying, "This isn't Florida. If you want hate, go to
I
Florida."
saw that. I saw that. Wasn't
I
that
mean,
crazy?
how embarrassing is that, though?
Yeah, yeah. If they were in their chambers, that was insane.
It,
It was
it,
insane.
it is. There's so many bills we could talk about that have just been so disgusting this past session. I know you introduced 22 bills.
I
You
did.
co-sponsored 15 bills.
Yeah.
I mean, you were working this session. That's a lot of work because I don't think people realize, to get these bills written up to introduce. I mean, that's a lot of bills. How are you finding the time to do all that?
Good staff. Joe, Miles, and Marina are my lifesavers. So they're the ones who do it. And I tell people all the time, don't let us fool you. If you're gonna have a good staff, you will not be good out in the open
Right.
because my staff, they have to be very well versed on what's happening in Florida and national politics because you can be asked at any point, what are your thoughts about this? And I'm like, yo, where we at?
Right.
So and then it's also important for you to have staff that challenge your thought just a tad bit.
Good.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes I can just go too far left and they'll be like, oh, come back,
Bring it
come
back
back.
in. Bring
Yeah,
it back in.
come in for this
Two of the bills you introduced, I was really upset that they died in committee. I mean, I understand, you guys are dealing with the supermajority up there. That one was the restoration of voting rights on sentencing score sheets, which I
Yes.
thought was very important.
Yeah.
And we know why they
Right.
didn't get past committee. But why did you introduce that bill?
Actually, I was working with Representative Gant on that, and so her and I were we were working on that together. And I thought it was important because, yeah, I think if Florida said that they're really trying to ensure that returning citizens have access to democracy, then that was one of those bills to say, all right, we'll prove it.
Right.
Show that you really want returning citizens to participate in this democracy. Yeah. And I guess by not getting the hearing, you see.
But that was a brilliant way to show them up. That was
Exactly.
a brilliant way to show them up. And here's the thing. I wish the Democrats would start talking more about those things. I really do, because I think if people see the efforts that are, because one of the criticisms the Democrats have is that, well, you aren't doing anything, right? But regular Joe in the street doesn't understand what a supermajority is. He doesn't understand that these bills have to go through a committee and get a hearing, and they don't understand the process of it. And people sit at home and don't go vote in local and state elections. So it's like you can't do what you can't do without the power.
That's
right.
That's right.
But I think if talking about those things and pushing it out would really help. But I'm preaching to the choir. I know. The other bill that I thought was so important was the Black Maternal Health Week. We know about Black maternity mortality in the United States. I don't think we talk about it so much in Florida. And so, I really love that I hope you put that up again, hopefully when we get a better Senate. But I hope you don't lose sight of that. No, let me ask you this. I know that some of your donors are, include AT&T, Disney, Publix, Walgreens, some of the big conglomerates, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel pressured to vote in a way that they would like you to vote?
Oh no, 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 not at all. You can ask anyone that I, you can, if you donate to me, that is not a signal for me to vote for your agenda. Um,
How do you
I,
make that clear to them though? Because the conception is among most people is
mm,
if you are accepting donors,
yeah,
donations from these types of donors,
yeah.
you're in their pocket.
Yeah, but I know that's the narrative quite often, that there are some dollars that I just won't take, right?
Mhm.
But like from those type of companies and those type of businesses that we speak with, and they are in our community, we definitely work with them, and many of them give for many different reasons. But one thing for sure is that it does not guarantee a vote for you, access for everyone. So it's just, I tell people all the time, at the end of the day, yeah, if you're voting based off of who give you money, then I mean you're not really representing the people.
Right, your people. Um,
Exactly.
so
But I
so
mean, listen, I tell you, in Publix and other entities, they know, because I voted against their interests this last session.
right.
And it's how you do it also, right? Because I'll speak to them and tell them why I'm against a particular piece of legislation, especially if it's really not benefiting consumers, or if we're not giving dollars, if we're giving the tax break to these big corporations, but we're not looking at how we can show some love to some of these small businesses, some of these small corporations that's like within my community. And I
Mhm.
can't keep supporting large corporations and we're not taking care of mom and pop shops.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So moving forward, what would you like to see, or what are some of your goals for the next session?
Is to turn people out, not just to vote, but to get more civically engaged. That's why I was on 99 Jams this morning. I'm doing Haitian radio on Friday. I'm going to do as many Zooms with individuals as in community meetings, backyard meetings, barbecues, wherever we can, to warn people that we can no longer be lackadaisical about what's happening
Mhm.
out in this world we call politics, because all of our interests is on the line right now.
Right.
And that message needs to be conveyed. And I think we also have a job to give people what the alternative can be
Mhm.
when we all participate in this process.
My largest listeners, my largest group of listeners right now are kids, I would say, because I'm old, but kids between 18 and 30.
Wow, sure. Yeah,
Which surprised me, to be quite honest. I thought it was going to be more of my peer group, but now that I know that,
yeah.
I've been sort of trying to think about, okay, what do they need to hear? What do they need to know? And so if there's anything you'd like to tell that age group about what's going on in the process or how to get involved, what would it be?
They can stay connected with me in my office. All on my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook is Shevrin Jones. Every year, every other month, we do something called We the People University in the
Oh, I didn't.
district, and that's where people get to have they have the opportunity to come out to learn about the process, learn how to apply for funding, learn how to write a bill, learn how to become an advocate. And so get engaged, because if when you get involved with it, you'll see why it's important for you to have some skin in the game. And I know
Repeat
you have
that
a
for
lot of
me.
young
What is
people.
it called?
We the People University.
Okay. And when is
And
it
I just
held?
think, yeah, absolutely, you should come out. But I think us involving young people right now, giving them skin in the game and showing them where their skin is in the game, I think it changes their concept a tad bit. So that's what I'm committed to moving forward.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, listen, I know I can't keep you too long because you're a busy man. I appreciate your time here. I would love for you to come back in the fall
Yeah,
session. I'm going to
100%.
schedule it now so that I'm on your books. So we can talk a little bit about some of the bills that you intend to introduce,
Deal.
and why.
Yeah.
Because I think, people need to start paying attention to these bills. Any other thoughts for us before we leave?
I just hope that everyone they're up to date on their voter registration, and they have if you want to vote by mail, make sure you go to your supervisor of election website and request your vote by mail ballot, because you're no longer on the roll, because as of January 1, everyone was wiped from the roll and everyone has to re-register to receive a vote by mail ballot.
Because voter suppression is happening.
Exactly.
All right, Senator Jones, thank you
Thanks,
so much
Rhea.
for your time.
Yes.
And we will see you in the next one.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. You can also follow the podcast on our social media pages.